We were muted.
Let's start over. It is the Sewer Authority Midcoastside regular board meeting starting at 7:02 p.m. on Monday, September 11, 2023. Roll call, please.
Director Dye.
Here.
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Decker.
Here.
Director Reynolds, substituting for Director Clark.
Present.
Thank you.
Didn't ask her. You didn't ask? I'm here.
Chair Slater.
I'm here.
Sorry.
Public comment. This is oral communication for items not on the agenda, and we have a long paragraph underneath it, but that's the short version. Do we have any hands up? I see Carlisle Ann. Do we have any comments from the board members first? Seeing none, Carlisle.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm tired. Saturday, MWSD had a very robust turnout for their 65th anniversary celebration. And as the special events chair, I just wanted to thank the directors of all our sister agency for being there in attendance, as well as the SAM management and employees. And the MWSD staff worked really hard getting it all together. But we had a pretty good turnout for our event, and it was a nice day. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will amend or add our 20th anniversary as a water district.
Wow. No, we're not supposed to give feedback, but I just wanted to say it was a lovely event, and I know you worked very hard on it, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Nancy Marsh.
Hi, everybody. As one of the partner agency board members who's made certain criticisms of SAM management, I want to address the concerns that were expressed by staff member Aaron at the August 28th SAM board meeting. I do appreciate Aaron for bringing his concern to the board. I think that's not easy to do. And I want to assure Aaron and all the staff that criticisms that I've expressed in a recent GCSD board meeting were in no way about the hard work that staff members do to keep the system running every day. I certainly understand the concept of teamwork and do appreciate the cohesiveness of the SAM team. The members of the SAM board and agency boards, though, have a different role from the team leaders. We're responsible for our ratepayers for ensuring good governance and effective management of SAM. For the boards to do our job well, we depend on SAM managers for proactive and timely planning, budgeting, and communication of the information necessary for the boards to do good, well-informed decisions. And a high standard of timely planning and consistently good data should be something that we reasonably expect. When the agency board is put in the position of considering an urgent and substantial revision to the annual budget for a project whose deadline was actually set several years ago, and despite that timeline, the information that was provided to us by SAM management to support making an approval decision is incomplete, conflicting, and in some ways significantly erroneous, the boards have a right and even a duty to be critical. Since our deliberations on approval decisions must be done in public meetings, those criticisms, unfortunately, are aired in public. Nevertheless, in support of SAM's operation, the GCSD board approved the budget amendment despite the errors. Since the operations staff has no part in delivering these management activities, I would hope that SAM management would assume clear ownership for the criticism of the plans and the materials that they have provided to the boards, and assure the staff that criticisms don't reflect on the team's hard work and successful delivery of daily safe and effective operations. In any case, I wanted to assure all of the operations staff that I do understand and really appreciate their dedication and commitment that they bring to their work, which is so critical to our community every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Sid, do you have another comment, or are you like me and just leaving your hand up for?
I completely spaced out. I've been on painkillers because of my.
No worries. Just double checking. All right. Seeing no more public hand raised. Moving on to consent agenda. We have 2 consent agenda items: minutes of August 28th, regular board meeting, and disbursements for September 11th, 2023. Does anybody want anything moved or discussed? Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent calendar.
Second? Right, we have a motion and a second from Director Penrose and, rather, directors. Let's have a vote. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Moving on to regular business. Discuss authority cash position and reserves, current and future anticipated attached.
Yes, at the time this staff report was put on our website last week, we hadn't yet had the finance committee meeting, so we have an update on that, but nevertheless, I'd just like to start off with an introduction that we've had the winter storm damages taking place for quite some time since December 31st, January 1st winter storm. We're still in the process of fixing a couple of the equipment, which take a little longer time. And the winter storm damages of approximately 1.6 million. We've reached out to insurance as well as FEMA, and we are yet to hear from them. Although FEMA has told us that they will support us in every which way they can, provided we get an answer from insurance. FEMA's policy is to bring us back to the position where we were prior to the winter storm, which means that as if it had not occurred, as if it had not, we had not spent that much amount of money. So in any case, we should be getting it, but when is the question? We have submitted all the paperwork, everything to the respective agencies. Insurance has been collecting a lot of information, and they get to give us an official version of what they think they can, and then we will reach out to FEMA. In the meanwhile, our emergency reserves are being drawn into. We started pulling out money from that to take care of our existing requirements of either payroll processes or whatever, I would say. So the attached sheet, which is a part of the staff report, indicates that there's a shortfall of about 266,000 as of now. That's as of September 7th, considering that the member agencies will be able to pay their invoices what we've already submitted. We normally submit it on the first day of every month. So we should be getting it very soon. There's no doubt about it. Considering that the member agencies will be paying us, we'll still have a shortfall of about 266,000 as of now. So this was brought up to the finance committee meeting, which took place about an hour back. And the finance committee decided there were two options, the same options indicated in my staff report, saying the first option was recommending a budget adjustment to the amount of 1.6 million approximately for winter storm damage. The option two was to continue to draw from the reserve without creating any replenishment in contravention of SAM's reserve policy. But the finance committee came up with an option three, which decided the option three, which is primarily to finance for the shortfall of close to 300,000. The member agencies have decided to fund that so that we don't take any money from the emergency reserve, to make sure that our reserves is well within our guidelines, which has been adopted. So SAM staff will reach out to the member agencies for the 300,000, which will go into emergency reserves. It was also decided that
We will have to vote on each agency.
it'll be taken to the respective agencies, and then you guys will vote for it, and then it'll come back for us to. It was also decided that this emergency reserve will be used strictly for emergency purposes and will not be used to finance the project. So if the finance committee members would like to add anything, please go ahead and add. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I don't have questions. I just have comments. I like the idea of an emergency reserve fund, and I like the idea of having a separate reserve fund. Because I think there are times when things are not emergencies, but they're important to do. And if we have a reserve fund with certain amounts set aside, then we don't have to be coming back all the time to the board, especially for smaller items, things that aren't that expensive. I'd also like to see an accounting of of our emergency and our reserve funds, how the money is spent on a regular basis, maybe on a quarterly basis, something like that. Take a look at what we have at the beginning of the year and what goes out each month and what it's going out for. So that we have some idea of what's left in the emergency fund and also of what things are being spent on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
typically, typically what we do is, the late fund, we have a fund in late. And that we ensure that it's got $2.5 million. And that $2.5 million is as per our reserve policy. We should have 1.25 as emergency reserve, repair reserve, and 2 times the monthly operating budget as an operating reserve. So put together, it's about $2.5 million. So we set aside $2.5 million for LAIF.
And that's inlaid, and that hasn't been touched.
No, that has been touched now, and that's being used.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying.
yes.
So we have that, and we will maintain that. So
Got
that will
it.
be a clear indication of our emergency. Sorry, Director.
And I just want to point out, so at the finance subcommittee, I had asked late afternoon for a spreadsheet of the drawdown on the American Reserve. And so we thought, in addition to this new option 3, that if and when we need to, draw down our reserves, we could do it maybe as often as a monthly basis if necessary, but quarterly, whatever is worked out.
Whatever.
But at that time, we would, and then we would review a drawdown on a monthly basis so that we could track, just like what you're saying, exactly.
And the
right.
finance committee would be doing the reviewing,
Well, the report would come to the full board.
but it would be good if the finance committee was looking at it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
The staff indicated that the operating reserve summary and the worksheet, which is in your packet,
Yes,
will be given to the finance committee meeting every month.
great.
Will be reviewed by the finance committee. And if there's a shortfall or whatever be the shortfall, then necessary action will be taken either way.
Great.
And I mentioned that, we have to go back and of course approve this approach, but that we would also ask that the city council, for instance, give you and I authority to deal with this on a regular basis without having to go back to the city council every time.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and I'd just like to comment that since I've been on the SAM board, this past storm is the only time, I believe, that we've gone into the emergency reserve. It was used exactly as it's meant to be used to deal with a major emergency that had expenses. So,
We did have it a couple of years back when during Beverly's time when the bus stuck.
oh, the bus stop,
failure,
one,
it's
that
about
was also.
1 million plus. And we had to do that, we had to take it from an emergency, that kind of.
Yeah.
That's a major thing. Yeah. So probably, I don't know, do we need a motion now for the, for what we adopted at finance
Make
committee?
the same motion, Debbie?
Let's see.
Debbie made the motion at this finance committee.
Yeah. This is
Would you like-
probably informational on this item.
It
at least
is only written as discussed. Well, I
What would
think
the,
we
what would the motion be?
direct staff to ask the member agencies to pay their share based on flow of the current shortfall and flow of the current budget. And the emergency reserve shortfall. We're talking about the reserves here. And additionally, if we need to draw on the reserve, there should be a monthly or quarterly accounting of those expenses and request for replenishment of those funds.
Would that be in lieu of amending the general budget, or is that part of a part of an amendment?
Well, it's to take care of any emergency shortfalls. Yeah, if we have a shortfall in the reserves, and then you might need to deal with it, in a mid-year budget adjustment, something like that. Or
Okay.
on a quarterly basis. Like we could, add funding on a monthly basis if necessary, but you could go to the member agencies to do budget amendments on a quarterly basis if necessary.
I'm comfortable with the Brown Act allows. I think we've sufficiently given the public notice between items 4A and 4B that I think you could do the motion.
Good. Because right now I'm just dealing with 4A.
Understood. I'm just trying to make sure the Brown Act, I think you're good.
And I'd just like to comment, I agree with Director Penrose about, I think we need an infrastructure reserve, or we need a contingency part, and I've been saying this for a long time.
Yes.
Projects do go over, and right now we have no mechanism really to deal with that. So
Yeah.
I think the intention is to really take a look at how we do our budgeting and how we do this to solve this problem.
Yeah, rather than have it come back as a controversial issue at almost every board meeting, let's deal with it ahead of time by creating a reserve that will take care of business.
I see that as separate though.
Yes, I
Dealing with
agree.
the emergency
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, no,
I
I'm just,
Yeah, I'm agreeing in principle.
I look forward to having this as a future agenda item. And I think this is a good time to start discussing.
Yeah.
What it's going to be, and it should be in fact part of our CIP program that we're going to be discussing starting in starting in December. Because this has been something I've been asking for a long time. So yay, let's get it done. So, do we need we have a motion, do we need a vote, or is this just a?
did you make
Yeah.
the motion?
Well, it's kind of a motion, but
Yeah.
Jeremy is indicating that maybe we don't need
It's just a consensus.
Yeah, what you could do is just provide direction to staff. That doesn't require a motion. But if you wanted to do a motion, I would be comfortable. I think you can do it either way. It's up to the board.
I prefer a vote. Just
can somebody formulate what I said in a,
Raising your hand, you want to.
Sid, what's your comment? Yes,
Sorry, I don't have a comment. I just had a quick question. Because I'm such a new person on trying to figure all this budget stuff out. Once you get your FEMA money, does that go towards the reserve budget that you've been drawing down on? Is that where it's gonna go?
And we would have to have a vote whether to return the funds to the agencies or apply it to other costs.
Well, if
Well,
you're
and
gonna
given-
create a new, I'm sorry,
yes,
if you're creating new funds for capital improvement, emergency funds, whatever, that might be one place to park it. I don't care. I just was curious. Thanks.
yeah, I think that's a worthwhile discussion for us to be having.
So why don't you make the motion? I think you can make it.
well, I thought I did. I'll try again.
Here we go.
Okay, so I move that we staff to request that member agencies pay their share of the 266,000 plus current shortfall in emergency reserves.
Their share being according to the
According
2020
to law.
2022
Yeah,
flow, yes.
And I had that we would continue this process each month if needed.
the way I phrased it here was, additionally, if Sam needs to draw on the reserve, there should be a monthly or quarterly accounting of those expenses and a request for replenishment of those funds.
Does that work?
That
I'll
sounds
second.
good. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Director Dyke,
Aye.
Director Roddick,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Randall,
Aye.
Chair Slater Carter.
Yes. Good. Moving right along to item B, proposed general budget amendment for fiscal year 2023-24. Information and board action as appropriate.
This is an item just for discussion and on August 14th, staff was requested to bring a project amendment to submit it to the member agencies for approval as the as the project for Princeton Pump Station had an increase in the earlier approved budget by about 1.3 million. So that was required by the member agencies, by the SAM board to bring it to the member agencies and get an approval for budget amendment. Apparently, this was discussed at all the three member agencies, and GCSD approved the budget amendment in the special meeting on August 24th, while Montero adopted a resolution consenting to approve the amendment. Actually, it got approved on Friday, Thursday, September 7th. And Half Moon Bay adopted a resolution deferring the requested budget amendment pending a renewed stipulation to pay under protest or final resolution court action. And therefore, the budget amendment failed. So this is just for discussion that it's brought to this forum. So Sam is not able to bring a budget amendment to the board since it did not pass through at the other agency. So staff is here to answer any questions if there's any. Just for clarification.
So, board, if we have questions. Seeing none, let's move to the public if there are any questions. Don't see any hands. So we'll close the hearing and bring it back to the board. What are we going to propose? Any action at all?
Now, this is discussion item, I think.
Well, it's discussion and board action as appropriate.
But without funding,
Okay, should we table this for another meeting, or are we just going to say that the current budget stands with no budget amendment? And we are not going to be able to proceed with the projects?
well, we
have
can
agreed
discuss
to?
that, yeah, in item C as well, but I think at this point, there is not the funding to do additional projects. that were proposed.
I just want it to be very clear for the record.
Yep.
That this board is unable to provide the funding that it agreed to in a lawsuit settlement with the RF.
I suggest that we take that up as item 4C. Item 4B, we can conclude that there's no change to the general budget, which was adopted early.
Yes.
I agree.
And then we can move to the next. item
Let's
4C.
move on to item C then. Authorize the award of contract to JMD funding for Princeton Pump Station Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $1,637,650 for the lowest responsive bid. See attached. Discussion?
Well, GCSD supports this project. Like to see it get done, I think it's important, but without funding to do it, don't support awarding the bid.
Thank you.
I think it is tragic that we make this mistake of not funding this start of the Princeton pump station. We are bound to run into a problem with the ERF. We are bound to pay another penalty. Who knows how much this time the penalty will be. The ERF, and as far as I'm concerned, will be, after the first experience, very reluctant to be as supple and flexible as they were the first time around. So I fear that this is going to cost us dearly. Also, because however long we hold this off, the cost will rise dramatically. And the next time, in this experience, if one of the people who won the bid is not getting the bid, the next time they won't participate, because they will be fed up with us trying to get a bid for them and then not being given the order.
I agree.
So this is tragic.
Yeah, I think it is tragic, and I think it's a shame that Granada and Montero have been unwilling to agree to the stipulation that they agreed to in the past.
That was.
And that is what's stopping the funding.
Let's give the full story, Barbara.
That's, you
In
know,
the past, there was a
that's my
stipulation
opinion.
for projects. This project is a completely different situation because it's mandated by a lawsuit settlement that this board agreed to. So for Half Moon Day to insist that we say you don't have to contribute if you win your lawsuit that you have in court right now, you're just ignoring the other lawsuit settlement, which requires you to pay your share of these projects.
Unfortunately,
So,
this is
let-
part of the IPS system.
I would like to have people raise their hand to speak.
Mhm.
So after Deborah Penrose, who would like to speak next? Okay,
Yeah, so my point was that this is part of the IPS. The IPS system is one that benefits the north counties, it benefits El Granada, it benefits Montara. It does not benefit our ratepayers, and we cannot, in good conscience, allow our ratepayers to take on the cost of something that you should be paying for. It's that straightforward. We don't do it for ourselves. We are representing Half Moon Bay ratepayers. And we're being fair to them. And
Keisha and then Barbara.
in truth, when we agreed to the settlement, we agreed to have it paid for. We did not agree to pay 1/3 of the costs or 2/3 of the costs or whatever it is based on flow. We agreed that it should be paid for, that it should be repaired. That's straightforward.
Thank you, Keisha.
As far as Sam is concerned, as far as Sam's staff is concerned, ERF consent decree, a violation of ERF consent decree is the second priority to Sam. Utmost priority to Sam is safety for my staff. If I lose a life, because it's a dangerous place to work at, if I lose a life, it's not going to come back. If we do not adhere to to the ERF consent decree, at the most we'll have to pay violations, fines, whatever it is, it's money, but I can't bring back a life. Therefore, it's important that we move forward with this project. It is a safety issue and it's required. We've been talking about this for quite some time. It's a confined space requirement. I don't know how many of you, the public, everybody has seen the Princeton Pump Station, but it's a very difficult place to work with. It's a confined space, which is very, very unsafe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara.
I just wanted to express the point of view in opposition. I don't want to get into a big fight here, but Half Moon Bay benefits in 3 ways from the IPS. First of all, the federal government gave us all the money to build the entire system. The plant happens to be in Half Moon Bay. It's lower geographically. Half Moon Bay had land. That's number one. That's a big deal. We wouldn't have this plant if we weren't all working together. Number two, we know the IPS can hold flow. And during the last storm, Half Moon Bay used the entire capacity of the plant. And if you hadn't had the IPS and the pieces of the system other pieces of the system that are up there, we would have had major problems both for us and for Half Moon Bay. And number three, you do have residents who use the IPS. You have Sam's Restaurant, you have parts of Miramar and so forth. So I just want to have that be our position rather than arguing about the facts with you. You made your case. I understand what you're saying, but for those 3 reasons, I disagree with your premise.
I just want to point out that it's not an issue of our residents, it's an issue of our ratepayers. Our ratepayers do not use the IPS. It's a gravity-fed system. We don't pump our effluent upstream into the IPS. It doesn't enter the IPS. So that said, I think we're willing to approve this contract tonight, but we will state for the record that doesn't mean necessarily that we'll pay for it, depending on the outcome of the trial. So we'll vote to approve the contract, but we're just stating for the record that doesn't mean we'll pay for it. It means that we will pay for it based on the outcome of our current litigation.
Peter, do you have another comment?
I look at numbers and I look at what is coming to us. And as Keishan said, that we have 2 things coming to us. We have a dangerous plant that definitely needs to be replaced, as everybody knows, where deathly incidents can occur. We've heard just now at the Burning Man event that somebody was electrocuted by stepping into the water that surrounded the crater cell. That can happen exactly in that plant. And that is a real danger, not only for the humans involved, but also for us with multi-million-dollar claims coming to us saying, you knew about this, you did not do anything to prevent this situation from happening, and now you are liable. That means we could, as SAM, be liable for multi-million-dollar claim if somebody indeed comes to their end in our Princeton pump
I
station.
invite you to make a motion.
Thank you. Or still, Jen, would you like to say anything?
I mean, I'm new to the conversation, so there's very little I probably can offer. I guess my question is just how are we intending to pay for something that we've decided the budget amendment is not going to move forward? So I guess that's the question I have. I guess I'm confused about.
That's an excellent question. I'm curious as well.
Right. So I feel like it's a little bit of posturing to say we support a contract, but we won't actually pay for it.
Thank you.
It's posturing.
Okay, Barbara?
I just say that the JPA says no expenditures in excess of those budgeted shall be made without the unanimous consent and approval of all of the directors representing the member agencies affected by the budget under consideration. And Jen and I spent quite a while talking to our attorney today, and we cannot vote for this contract when there's no funding for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Greg Davis has his hand raised. When the board finishes, just like you mentioned.
Greg, why don't we, and then I will finish up with a few comments. And then we'll call the question.
You wanted me to make my public comment now?
Please.
So I just
And
wanted to
anyone else who-
revisit. I just wanted to revisit the benefits issue. Of course, Montera back in the early 80s had to throw away a perfectly good working sewer plant in order to join with this plant. It was forced to actually. And that allowed Half Moon Bay to get a failing sewer plant upgraded at less cost than they would have by themselves. So that's one benefit. As Barbara pointed out, it provides protection against severe wet weather events where we've held back flows from the north and prevented greater damage at the plant. The point that I think Deborah was making is that it's not ratepayers, but it is residents of Half Moon Bay, including the Cherry Stem, Frenchman's Creek, and parts of Murata, who are in Half Moon Bay proper, who use the IPS. It also, the IPS allows SAM to perform maintenance on the plant by shutting parts of it down. And the SAM staff, I can sure talk to this. And then finally, the wet weather storage and the IPS has served as an equalization basin to reduce flows while SAM processes a backlog of waste and or to even out flows during a drought so that minimum fluid volume is always available. So there are a number of benefits, that are easy to document. That's all I wanted to say.
Opinions on this item are a dime a dozen. And the court may, side with you, but then again, they may not. So,
Thank you. I want to end the discussion by saying to the public and to all the board members, for the Half Moon Bay City Council meeting where they decided not to amend the budget, Keishan and at my request, Keishan and Jeremy worked on a letter to correct the errors in the staff report. There were significant errors, and it's a public document. It's available to everyone. Ask to have it sent to you. It was given in a timely fashion to the Half Moon Bay City Council and your attorneys and your staff, who chose to accept the errors in their staff report rather than to go with a correct version of facts. I will say that MWSD has passed several resolutions not to pay additional costs created by the Half Moon Bay delays. We're more than happy to share that with Renata, and you might want to join in. Because I see this as an ongoing problem. This plant has been needing contemporary design and safety standard since early 2000, maybe before that.
You want me to comment?
Please,
Is that what you really want?
I want a date.
I started here part-time in 1987. at that time, we weren't gonna put any money into the Princeton pump station because it was gonna be rebuilt shortly. Here we are, remaining 36 years later, we haven't put any major funding into that station. It's unsafe. You have to go down 2.5 stories to work on any of the pumps that are down there. A couple years ago, we were accessing the wet well, ladder broke. Luckily, the guy that was going down the wet well had enough upper body strength that he didn't fall in the frickin' wet well. Yeah, it's a jacked up station, but hey.
You can blame
You guys do
GCFD
you,
and
so
Montera for
whatever.
failure to pay for deferred maintenance.
Right.
Decades of their.
Let's
Yeah.
stop with the
No,
sniping. No, let's
I'm gonna
stop with,
correct the record
let's
here.
stop
No.
with the sniping.
I'm gonna tell you what our
I would
motion
like to
was.
go into mute.
No,
No.
Go into mute,
Kevin
please.
Faye's-
I'm calling, I'm
Meeting.
asking
Faye's
you to
decision.
stop.
All right, to defer
Keisha,
the
read the
budget
letter.
amendment, not to deny the budget amendment. After
exactly.
they voted to defer the budget amendment, not to deny it.
And there was no date certain.
You know, pending the litigation. It's with the bid expires this
The
week.
bid expires.
Yeah, I remember.
You
That
can't
was the
defer a
thing.
bid if the person who bids doesn't want to extend the date.
Right.
You're
We're
out.
talking about the
You're out of
budget
the-
amendment, not the.
Okay,
contract.
let's get back to an orderly meeting, please. I am sorry, Halfmoon Way felt it had to interrupt.
I'm sorry, Montera has to feel like she has to dominate the meeting
Meow.
and put down Half Moon Bay whenever she can. I'm
I
sorry.
only speak the
I'm
truth.
sorry.
We have a public,
I see a public comment from Carlisle Ann,
I just
who
wanted
is
to,
a board member on MWSD, but I'm sure is speaking as an individual.
I am speaking as an individual, and I really do worry about the safety of the SAM personnel that have to work on the Princeton pump station. And as Tim pointed out, that's been a long deferred repair or upgrade. So as a member of the public, I would just feel horrible if somebody were to be injured or die because of some kind of plant failure there. And secondly, on all the sniping back and forth doesn't play well on Al, because when you overtalk each other, its head whips back and forth and you really can't hear very well. I mean, I wish you guys would wait to be recognized by the chair instead of over-talking each other. But I've said that in the past. So I guess you're going to do what you want to do. I know you guys are planning a lot of development in Half Moon Bay. I think your flow is already at 62%, but you've got the Joe Cerna grant to put 47 mobile homes, hopefully not on septic, over there on 880 Stone Pine, and the county's going to be trying to buy the Bay Cities nursery. So that's a big project that'll come online at some point. I think you have a hotel scheduled, or at least up for possible permitting in front of James Ford. So your flow is going to do nothing but go up. And the more you stall, the more of the expense you'll have to pay down the road, even whatever the court rules. So think about it in the long term of maybe trying to be cooperative and get some repairs done before the court ruling. Thank you.
Deborah Penrose,
Yes,
followed by Jen.
I have a question for Keishan. Is there not enough money in the reserve funds to cover the difference for the
No.
Portola pump stations,
for the Princeton pump stations.
the Princeton pump station?
No, we do not have that. That was the item which we discussed, where we've said that we've already less by 266,000 in the emergency reserves.
So the emergency reserves are empty now?
No, they're short by 266,000.
Yes, and how much is left in the emergency reserve funds?
That's about 2.6 minus 266, maybe 2.3.
Yeah, which
approximately.
would be enough to get to work if we really needed to do the Portola pump station project. For safety reasons, we could use those funds.
Correction, Princeton Pump Station.
Princeton Pump Station.
Yes, we could do
Good,
that, but
thank
then we
you.
would be, the board would be taking a decision to take away money from the emergency.
I understand that, thank you. I just, you know, if it's an emergency, if it's as serious as it is at the Princeton Pump Station, then I think we ought to be considering using emergency funds.
Yeah, that was the option 2 in the item 1, and the board decided to go for option 3.
Jen?
Well, so I have like a follow-up to this comment. Would that qualify as an emergency? Would working on Princeton Pump Station qualify as an emergency to draw on funds, emergency funds? So,
You can, if the board votes for it.
under how it's articulated, okay.
But it's not on the agenda tonight.
It's not.
Okay, so then I just had a clarifying question for Debbie, when you referenced CFD deferring, what were you referencing? Sorry.
The history of the last 20-25 years in terms of addressing deferred maintenance on the plant. Yes. We ran a shoestring operation intentionally, not to spend money, not to raise rates.
No one's innocent. Barbara Guy.
I just wanted to say that the policy says that the reserve is to ensure that adequate cash is available to stabilize and avoid sudden budget impacts in a particular year for material unplanned repairs or replacements that require immediate attention to continue operations. I don't think this would qualify, and for our discussion, with storms coming this fall, we need to have an actual emergency reserve. If we start using this money to budget it. I also want to make the point that if, oh, I'm sorry. Usually keep that turned off, I apologize. If the contractor perhaps has another job or something that can be done, once we know that the first time the lawsuit was heard, the judge decided that Montera and Granado were so clearly correct that it didn't even need to go to trial and issued summary judgment. If we win this, I would hope that this project somehow, this contractor could come back and begin work whenever that happens in November, December, January. I know that's an unlikely thing, but I think that would be, at this point, given our circumstances, the best outcome that we could look for.
Thank you. Deborah?
So arguments on the appeals litigation happen on October 5th,
Right, in the morning.
the court is likely to make a decision within 45 days.
Right.
We are likely to know before the end of the year what the outcome of this litigation is, right?
Right.
And so everybody gets certainty one way or the other. So we're not going to need to expend all the money for this project between now and mid-December. It's not gonna happen. We're gonna, start the project up with money that we have, but we don't need the entire amount before the end of the year. So we will know before the end of the year, what is the what. So this idea that somehow, the project is going to fail is not true, because we're not even going to need all that money between now and then.
So to that point then, or to both your points, then is there, I don't know who's running the actual bidding process on the board, but
It's finished, the bidding process.
well, the relationships with
That would be our engineer and Keisha.
so then I'm just curious, is there an opportunity to return back to the lead bidder and say, we'd like to pause, given an outcome that we're anticipating to be resolved within, the next couple of months, and that you are our number one contender. And so, as a consultant, this is not something that would be unfamiliar for me to have happen. A client say, we're in a situation where this is our limitation. You are the intended or one of choice. And could we pause with this bid in place, maybe providing some nominal holding?
Yeah,
May I
if I
respond?
was a contractor, I wouldn't do that, because prices increase day by day, month by month. If you want him to hold the same prices for the next 4 months, it'll be difficult for the contractor. As it is, he has held the price for 2 months. The bid was due on, I think he was bid on July or something. So they've already
It's
held the
been
price. It'll be difficult for the contractors to know very much to hold the prices, because they have to procure so. equipment and all
After,
that.
Peter, after.
I
Again,
just wanted to point out that I've already said that we're prepared to approve the motion to authorize the award of contract. But because of the litigation, we're going to state in the record that, you know, we will withhold payment pending the outcome of litigation. But we're willing to vote yes to the contract.
Peter and then Barbara.
I must ask Kishan here, if we award the contract to this contractor, how long will it start? Or how long will the construction take? When will the construction start? And is it going to be a difficult thing for us to reach the June date from ERF
yes,
by awarding this contract now? Because I presume that the contract will take at least 6 to 8 months to finish, if not longer. And therefore, we would already, if we don't make the decision now to award the contract, miss the deadline.
yes, we are already on a tight timeline. The contractor has given us a indication of 9 months to complete the project. There's a couple of things which are long lead items, which takes time, like the package pump station. So if it's 9 months, we have to order it now, and then he has to put together his bonds and insurances and all that together. And then the kickoff date will start after we give him a notice to award or notice to proceed. What we call. This is just the notice of intent. Then we reach out to the contractor, say that we would like to award the contract. Then he puts together all the documents, gives it to us, we evaluate those documents, and then day one starts. So I'm hoping that day one, if we take a decision today, day one can start in October. So we'll just be cutting it to fine. 9 months from October will reach you to June 30th, 2024. Hoping that there are no other hiccups on the way with all the winter storms coming up. They don't know, we might lose a couple of days, but these are all things which they don't know. But it will be on a tight timeline.
Barbara?
Well, it's fiscally irresponsible to support a contract that we don't have the funding for. And if in the highly unlikely case that we lose the lawsuit, then we don't have enough money to pay for the Princeton Summit Station and the Montero pipeline. And we're going to have to, you know, raise rates. At this point, I'm not willing to support a contract that we don't have the funding for. And we talked to our engineer and our attorney for quite a while today about this, and that's where.
Thank you. I would suggest that we have, that Half Moon Bay perhaps have a special meeting and Sam have a special meeting, and that we table this item until Half Moon Bay can approve an amendment so that we can be within the fiscal constraints and requirements of the JPA. I think it's very important not to break the JPA. And I think it's very important that we get this project done as soon as we can. As delays since 1987. Yeah, I remember when I got an MWSD and there were discussions at Princeton Pump Station, and I never did understand why the delay. But in any event, I would suggest that we need to stand within the JPA. It's important as a consideration for when the lawsuit is settled, whichever way it's settled. We still need to be acting within the JPA. We can't be throwing it out. We need to get this project done. And I believe Half Moon Bay can give us an approved amendment very quickly. And that we can then Sam can then approve this project so that we are completely within the constraints of it all.
You're living in a fantasy dream world.
What would the amendment be?
They
Exactly,
need the amendment to the budget. Oh. The one you rejected.
We have.
Unless you are holding Sam hostage.
No.
Let me finish, please. Please, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Such a lady. I think that we have to get this done, and you could approve the budget amendment, and we could then proceed. unfortunately, I'm concerned, well, no, I'm not concerned. I'm glad to hear that whatever happens in the appeal of and the decision at the trial court, that we will make it a point as board members to stay within the constraints of the JPA until it's amended. Deborah Penrose, oh, you were next, Ruddick, and then Penrose.
I move that we authorize award of contract with JMB Construction for the Princeton Pump Station Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $1,637,650 to the lowest responsible bidder.
I second.
Okay, and do we have any questions from the?
Or would you pay your share of the initial costs, starting from when the contract was approved?
We're asking you to put up other funds for the initial project work, and when the litigation is resolved, we will pay what our fair share is.
So the answer is no.
The only other possibility would be that if you held a special meeting, Granada with Montera, and decided that you weren't gonna hold us hostage with your lack of allowing us to use the stipulation as we have in the past.
Or advanced
So,
monies that you can be.
You know, you can also have a special meeting about that. That might work.
That's a good trick.
Yeah, you're refusing to pay, so we should get together and decide we're gonna pay for it ourselves.
So,
Madam Chair, I call the question.
thank you. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Dye,
No.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Randall,
No,
Director Ruddick,
Yes, with the caveat that we will only pay based on the resolution of the litigation.
Director Decker,
No.
Chair Slater Carter.
No. No, it's asking that creates too many inconsistencies in the JPA and in our funding policies. And before we can break all of these, we need to have gone through and corrected them to meet this requirement. So the motion failed.
Just make one comment, which is that this motion would be obligated contract that you were only obligating us to pay for, especially the
Sam would be paying for it.
Well,
Sam would be paying for it.
Sam
All
doesn't have the
three
money to pay for it.
agencies would be paying for it.
And would empty out the reserve funds into a situation.
No,
where we-
Project.
Oh, you're
done.
Only starting
The
up
money
to-
between and getting your.
Barbara Dye was speaking, followed by Jen, followed by Peter. Thank you.
I said my.
Okay, Jen.
I just don't understand. My question to you, Hopper May, is in what world would you ever commit to something that you don't have the money to pay for? Like, one example of where you would ever say, we're going to buy a house, but we don't have any money to pay for the house. We're going to go buy a car, but we can't afford the car. Like, where would you enter into a contract with something without having funds to support it?
You know, it's very easily resolved. You give us a stipulation that says that if we win the lawsuit, we don't have to pay. Now, there's still room for negotiation and how we work all that out, but all you gotta do is say, yes, we will give you a
Simple.
stipulation. It's as simple as that. The choice is yours. The choice is not ours. The choice is yours.
Thank you.
There are two
That's-
votes.
Yeah.
We've had a vote. The motion has failed. Do we have other consideration?
We haven't actually
Peter-
voted yet, did we?
Yes, we
Yes,
did.
We did.
Let's have another one.
What?
Let's do it 2 or 3 times. That's what I heard you say.
Peter,
no.
you had a few comments before we move on.
Yeah, I'm just stunned at this development. And we have seen your stipulation. And your stipulation is a clawback of money that has been spent since the beginning of the force pipeline. That's a major difference with the stipulation that we had earlier. Therefore, our attorney very clearly has pointed out to us, this stipulation is asking for an additional thing that never in the past has occurred. So it is something that is just not acceptable. So the stipulation to ask us to approve that stipulation, knowing very well what your attorney is trying to do by putting something in that previously was not there, you should know that. And to assume that we easily then sign the stipulation is completely wrong because we have a good attorney.
Then just approve the motion I made tonight and get this project going.
Thank you,
We're
our
not gonna need all the money
No more.
in the next couple of months.
She's talking.
She's pounding this.
You're interrupting.
So I'm pounding the table.
Got your
You
shoe?
launched this decision.
Would you like a shoe? I didn't have to use you. Oh, well, moving right along, so Keisha,
I'm disappointed that we have not been able to take a decision in spite of the fact that Sam staff proposed that let's go ahead and do a budget amendment for storm damage expenses, because it's a fact that Sam has spent about 1.6 million for winter storm damages. And where did the money come from? We had to take it partly from a reserve. So if we get the 1.6 million financed for winter storm damage by the member agencies, which will be returned back once we get money from insurance or FEMA, we can at least use that 1.6 million for the Princeton pump station. That was what was being proposed. I proposed it in the finance committee. I proposed it as item 1 and 2. I'm disappointed that we're able to move forward, but so be it. That's the board's decision. And
We're prepared as an alternative to support option 1. As long as we include in that motion that the member agencies will get the money back, once FEMA and the insurance company act. So we're happy as a plan B, support option 1.
the decision had already been taken earlier in item 4A, so. and the
You
finance
you
committee.
could do a motion for reconsideration if you wished. The board could do that if
I
they were
move that
inclined.
we reconsider item 4A.
So I'll second.
can we have a roll call, please?
Oh,
Discussion,
Can I have I have a question?
Jen and then Barbara.
Because I wasn't in the
and then Keisha.
finance committee meeting, so can you explain what the first option was and then what your sort of stipulation would be and I just want to understand that before we move on. You're saying,
Yeah, if you go to item 4A.
yeah,
Option 1, recommended a budget adjustment with member agencies for the winter storm damage expenses in the amount of 1.6 million. We also have a reserve policy, which clearly says that once our reserves go up by the required amount, the balance of the money will be returned back to the member agencies. So assume a hypothetical case right now, because nothing has been decided, that 1.6 million Sam gets from the member agencies. We get it, say, in 15 days from now. And then 2 months from now, we hear back from FEMA and insurance, they give us the 1.6 million. So what does Sam do? It's like double dipping. But what Sam actually does, which is required to do as per reserve policy, is return back the 1.6 million to the member agencies. So that will at least allow us to start off the Princeton pump station project with that $1.6 million until January, February, till such time that the lawsuit takes a decision, and whatever decision is taken. And then the member agencies can do a budget adjustment for the Princeton pump station, whatever be the amount. At least we'll get the project going.
and what was Montera and GCD's reaction to option 1 in the finance meeting?
well, I talked about what our attorney said today, which is that, that leaves Sam, if you're going to use the reserve funds to start this project, then you're without reserves again. And we just, in our meeting, we talked about the importance of having reserves with the storm season coming up to us. And and actually technically the reserve policy doesn't allow the use of the reserves for a project like this. And that's why,
Montera's position was, this is a little bit like the Titanic. We don't have enough, it's a shell game with the life rafts, and we don't have enough to begin with. Right. Deborah,
Staff has offered up a really good workaround in option 1. I don't see why we wouldn't take it tonight. We replenish
It's
the
a
reserves at
misuse
the amount requested.
of funds, and it leaves Sam without adequate reserves. And the way the policy is, we'd also have to start. I'm trying to figure out how these okay. money goes into the reserves, we use it for this, then we're required to put more money in because we're supposed to keep the reserves up. So as we spend money, we're giving more money. It's like,
Well, Montera's concern is that this reserve policy has been set by this board after much discussion from each of the member agencies. And I am very concerned about the long-term effects of this, and quite frankly, how we are going to be handling appeals court decision-making. I hear an active effort to undermine the JPA before we've even had a decision. And I'm very, very concerned about that. I will also mention that our attorney has told us, Montera's, that the trial court decision could come as late as the appeals court as late as 90 days afterwards, which would be January 5th. And
Not likely.
I'm not arguing with you, I'm reporting what our attorney said. And I hope it's sooner. But until then, again, because of Half Moon Bay's reliance on a ridiculous stipulation that they are asking Montera and Granada to sign, leaving us open to unknown further actions by Half Moon Bay, and on the advice of counsel from two experienced counsel, both Bill Parkin and Christine Fitzgerald. I repeat, I am very concerned about how we're going to be handling the rest of these issues. I think this is a bad example, and I hope we can all learn from it and move forward. But I think undermining the JPA and undermining policies that have been in place for years and discussed at length on a single motion is not good for either Sam or for any of the member agencies. And Jeremy, I'm very sorry that you're going to be having to tell ERF this. I will add that Montera is not going to cover extended costs that go up from having to renegotiate this contract. And you are correct, Evan, had we corrected this problem way back when Half Moon Bay was at 50% of flow, and Montera and Granada were at 30 and 20, and costs were significantly lower, this could be done. Our employees could be safe, and we wouldn't be wasting our time tonight.
We've never been at 50 since I've been.
Excuse me, I'm next.
She's interrupting you, not me.
Have you finished?
No.
Okay, please go on.
So I am looking forward to a truce on this antagonism and moving forward.
You're not doing your part.
As an agent. Oh, thank you. You know, I appreciate that. I'm doing a good job. Thank you for your compliment.
There
So-
was a motion to reconsider. I don't know if it ever
We
got
have a
second or
motion to
not.
reconsider. We're going to call the question now.
No, I
Deborah.
had my hand up for discussion. If the critical thing here is saving lives, preventing loss of lives, then the critical thing is not reserve funds, it's not JPAs, it's not whether we're having arguments in this room. The critical thing is getting the Princeton pump station taken care of so that we don't lose lives. Our general manager has stated that he can see if we adopt option 1, that we can get it done. That we have enough enough funds to carry us through to January before the real rainy season is going to start, by the way. And that will get us going. That will take care of ERF, will take care of the Princeton pump station, and we'll have a decision from the courts, and this animosity, which is unbelievably unpleasant, can stop. And we can get on with the business of doing what we need to be doing, which is letting Keishan and Tim run a plant.
It's Jen and then Barbara.
So I think that the thing that strikes me on this is that what we're saying is we're relying on for option one, a refunding of the expenditures through FEMA insurance, which we don't have a clear line of sight to at this point. So to your point, I agree 100% with what you're saying. And so if it were really just about prevention of loss of life and injury, then you would have approved amendments, because that's how we would have gotten the budget for this project. So again, making a big statement about this being about loss of life and prevention of injury, but yet you refuse to approve the budget amendment that was put before this group before. So you're making an argument that's circular.
No,
Thank you.
you're making an argument that's circular.
Thank
I'm
you.
making a statement.
Ms. Penrose, thank you. Let's call, Peter, do you have anything to say?
No.
Let's call the question.
Yes.
Roll call vote, please.
What?
To reconsider item 4A.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Randall,
No.
Director Dye?
No.
Director Radek,
Yes,
Director Decker,
No,
Chair Slater Carter?
Okay. Motion fails. Moving on to general manager's report.
I don't have anything specific. Our detailed report will be the second meeting of the month.
Okay. Attorney's report. PFAS.
Yes, thank you. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to talk about, I included two items that are kind of cutting edge issues with PFAS. In fact, I may share my screen here. Let's see here. With the Loomis bill. Yeah, I'll share my screen real quick. Oh, gotta get somebody to give me permission. You know what? I'll just go ahead and I'll wing it here. So the first handout I gave the board pertains to the EPA rule dealing with the two most kind of the usual suspects on PFAS. And for those who aren't following what's going on with PFAS, there are these chemicals that are found in all sorts of things that used to be very common. Scotch Guard, frying pans, firefighting foam, really prevalent in the economy and throughout the United States. And the result of that, and these things, they were called the forever chemicals. They were called that because they worked really, really well. And they were really, from a chemical perspective, really hard to break down. Well, it turns out they're also potential carcinogens. And it's really been a focus of the EPA and the state of California. These things are very persistent in the environment. And they've wound up in drinking water and in other places. And in fact, they've wound up in wastewater primarily from excretions from people's bodies, because we have so much that's built up over time. And PFOS and PFOA were the two most common kinds. So the first rule I gave you was the EPA proposed rule to list PFOA and PFOS as circular hazardous substances. That rule was supposed to take effect to go final right around now, but the EPA extended the deadline for a final rule until February 2024. And why is that significant? Why is hazardous substance significant? It's significant because almost all wastewater plants are going to have some level of PFAS in their wastewater because, again, it's coming from people's bodies because we excrete it. And over time, that will be less as there's less in the environment. But right now, at the levels that they're talking about, parts per trillion, it doesn't take much. So it potentially affects wastewater plants like SAM in the sludge. Is our sludge now going to be considered a hazardous substance? Any spills, if we have sewage spills, well, that's the release of a hazardous substance under CERCLA, potentially creating cleanup liability for it. Recycled water, if there's plans in the future to reuse recycled water, unless you're doing certain kinds of treatment, which SAM isn't currently doing, like microfilter, like reverse osmosis is the one that's most common, but ion exchange or GAC, which I'm not clear that would even be effective with a wastewater operation. You're going to have a hard time using recycled water because it's going to exceed the levels for PFAS. And finally, even for ocean discharges like SAM has, it can wind up in NPDES permits like SAM's. And the San Francisco Regional Board has actually proposed some really remarkably low limits for PFAS, for PFOA and PFOS. So anyway, it's coming our way. And so let me just, the next thing I was going, let's see if I got the ability to share screen. Nope, still don't have it. The second handout I gave you was the bill by Senator Loomis that it may be one of the reasons we're seeing a delay from EPA. EPA understands that water and wastewater systems did not create this problem. Water and wastewater systems passively receive these chemicals that were put into the environment by 3M, DuPont, and other chemical companies. So there is a bill that I included in the materials, SB or Senate Bill 1430 by Senator Loomis of Wyoming, and it has have co-sponsors. It is not done well on the Democratic side. It's been primarily Republican support, which is problematic because for anything to pass these days, it really has to have bipartisan. You'll see that a protected entity includes a publicly or privately owned operated treatment works, which would include SAM. And if you are a protected entity as defined in the bill, then you would be subject to the exemption language from liability, which states that subject to Section C, no person may recover costs or damages from a protected entity, which would include SAM, under CERCLA for cause arising from a release to the environment of a covered PFAS. So anyway, that's so things are changing quickly. I don't know whether this bill ultimately passes or not. There is some bipartisan support for it, and there's certainly concern about open-ended liability for entities like utilities that had nothing to do with putting these chemicals into the environment and then are stuck potentially dealing with very costly consequences of having to try to address them. So I think things to think about in the future is, unless the board is inclined, there's no action tonight per se, but things to think about in the future would potentially be to support CASA and potentially NACWA, which is the National Sanitation Agency organization, in trying to advance either Senate Bill 1430 or an equivalent to it that does create a carve out from liability for agencies like SAM. And then potentially to discuss, and this is something that's happening all over California, at least, and I suspect all over the country, is identifying, there's different lawsuits that have been filed against the PFAS manufacturers, primarily 3M and DuPont, but there's others as well, some of which are in bankruptcy, some of which are headed to bankruptcy and are not there yet, but there's many, many billions of dollars worth of liability out there. And so something to consider in the future, because the SAM is likely to experience costs associated with PFAS regulations that are coming, it may be something to consider to potentially engage some of the law firms and there's a variety of different groups that are doing this, to potentially to get in line for a potential opportunity to seek a settlement. So anyway, just not something we need to necessarily talk too much about tonight, but I wanted to make the board aware of the issue and take any questions now, and hopefully we can have some discussions about this in the future.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to director's report. Do we have any? Okay, I will comment that October 5th at 8:30 in the morning will be the the appeals court hearing in the 6th District Court of Appeal for MWSD versus GCS. I'm sorry, for Half Moon Bay versus MWSD and GCSD. It will start at 8:30 in the morning. You can tune in, so you can listen to it, or you will be able to attend. The arguments will last 30 minutes, 15 minutes for each side. Montera and Granada are going to be splitting the 30 minutes. And then the hearing will end and we will get a decision in somewhere between, I don't know, that afternoon and 90 days out, say 45, others say longer. So we should know. So if folks are interested in hearing the arguments, please tune in and, MWSD is going to be putting the, contact information on our website so that folks can come to the MWSD website. I would hope Renata would as well. And Half Moon Bay as well, so that we can have, as many people as possible to hear the arguments. So that's the end of my comment. Moving on to topics for future board consideration. One that's coming up in December, and I've been asking for us to get prepared for it, is the capital improvement program. It appears that everything is going to be on hold until we get a decision from the appeals court. That said, I would like for us to be working on listing the projects and the needs and prioritizing them so that we can not have to wait 36 years to get things fixed. We will now adjourn and convene in closed session. We have conference with legal counsel, to potential cases of anticipated litigation, conference with legal counsel pending litigation for the Ecological Rights Foundation versus Sewer Authority Midcoastside. D is conference with legal counsel existing litigation for the Half Moon Bay versus Granada CFD and Montero WSD and Sewer Authority Midcoastside. Public employee performance evaluation for general manager and public employee performance evaluation for general counsel. So let's take a 5-minute break and we convene in closed session. Thank you. Hope that worked. 10:53.